In the quiet suburban town of Maple Creek, 11-year-old Emma Carter has a dream joining her classmates on a once-in-a-lifetime trip to the Chicago Aquarium. But when finances threaten to keep her from going, Emma takes matters into her own hands, setting up a humble lemonade stand in her driveway. What begins as a simple act of determination quickly becomes something far greater. When a group of unexpected visitors stops by her stand, their kindness sparks a chain of events that transforms not only Emma's life, but her entire community. As Emma faces the challenges of growing her small project into a movement, doubts creep in. Can one young girl truly make a lasting difference? And what will she learn about herself, her neighbors, and the power of giving along the way? The summer sun hung high over Maple Creek, Illinois, casting its golden rays across the quiet suburban streets. 11-year-old Emma Carter stood in the small driveway of her family's one-story house. Her home was modest, but well-kept, with neatly trimmed bushes and a fading white picket fence that framed a patchy lawn. Despite its imperfections, it was home, a place her mother, Janice, worked tirelessly to maintain. Emma surveyed her creation with a mix of pride and nervous anticipation. Her lemonade stand, a simple structure made of an old card table and a striped yellow and white tablecloth, was set up at the edge of the driveway. She had spent the previous night painstakingly painting a colorful sign that read, "Emma's Famous Lemonade, 50 cents a cup." The letters were surrounded by hand-drawn lemons and cheerful little hearts. Her goal was simple but deeply important to her: to raise $50 to join her class on a trip to the Chicago Aquarium. It was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to see marine life up close, and Emma had been dreaming about it for months. But her family's financial situation was tight. Janice worked long hours as a waitress at the local diner, and every dollar was carefully budgeted for rent, groceries, and other essentials. When Emma had asked about the trip, Janice's tired eyes had softened with sadness. "I want you to go, sweetie," she had said, "but we just cannot afford it right now." Emma refused to give up. With her mother's encouragement, she had come up with the lemonade stand idea. For days, she had been planning and preparing. That morning, she had woken up early to squeeze lemons, measure sugar, and perfect her recipe. She poured her heart into every detail, determined to earn her way to the aquarium. Now, as the morning sun bathed her stand in light, Emma felt a flutter of nerves. What if no one stopped? What if she did not make enough money? She shook off the doubts and took a deep breath. "It will be okay," she told herself. "I just have to try." The first half hour was quiet. Cars rolled by without stopping, and the street was mostly empty. Emma waved at a few passers-by, but they only smiled and kept walking. Her excitement started to wane, and she felt the sting of disappointment creeping in. Just as she was about to retreat into the shade of the porch, Mrs. Thompson, their elderly neighbor, shuffled over. She held a small coin purse in her wrinkled hands and offered Emma a warm smile. "Well, do not you look all set up for business?" Mrs. Thompson said, her voice as gentle as the summer breeze. "I will take a cup, dear." Emma's face lit up. She poured the lemonade carefully into a paper cup, her hands trembling slightly. When Mrs. Thompson took a sip, her eyes widened with approval. "This is delicious, Emma," she said. "You have a real talent." Emma beamed. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson." Mrs. Thompson handed over $1, waving away the change. "Keep it," she said. "I am sure you will need it for that trip of yours." As Mrs. Thompson shuffled back to her house, Emma felt a surge of hope. Maybe this could work after all. By mid-morning, a few more neighbors had stopped by, each offering kind words and encouragement. Emma began to relax, her nervousness replaced by a growing sense of pride. Her tip jar clinked with coins and small bills, and her little notebook showed she had already made $8. But just as the day seemed to be picking up, the unexpected happened. A low rumble echoed down the street, faint at first, but growing louder. Emma squinted into the distance and saw them, a group of motorcycles turning the corner. There were at least 8 of them, their chrome glinting in the sunlight. Each rider wore a leather jacket, and their helmets reflected the afternoon glare. Emma's heart began to race. The bikers roared down the street, their engines vibrating the air. Neighbors peeked through their curtains, and a few kids playing nearby stopped their games to watch. The motorcycles slowed, and one by one came to a stop right in front of Emma's lemonade stand. The largest biker, a tall man with a gray beard and a jacket covered in patches, swung his leg off his bike and removed his helmet. His face was rugged, his eyes piercing but not unkind. Emma stood frozen, clutching the edge of her stand. Her mind raced with questions. Who were they? Why had they stopped here? The man stepped forward, his heavy boots thudding against the pavement. He looked at the stand, then at Emma. "Is this where I can get the best lemonade in town?" he asked, his deep voice rumbling like his motorcycle. Emma swallowed hard. Her voice wavered as she replied, "Yes, sir. It is 50 cents a cup." The man chuckled and pulled a crumpled dollar from his pocket. "Make it 2." Emma's hands trembled as she poured the lemonade. She handed the cups to the man, who took a long sip from one. His expression softened, and he nodded in approval. "Not bad, kid," he said. "What is your name?" "Emma," she said softly. "Well, Emma, you have got yourself a new customer base," he said, turning to his crew. "Best lemonade I have had in years." The other bikers dismounted, their jackets adorned with intricate designs, flames, skulls, and names Emma did not recognize. A tall woman with braided hair and a jacket that read "Sherry" stepped forward. She dropped a $5 bill on the counter. "I will take 10 cups for the crew," she said, her voice warm but commanding. Emma blinked. "10 cups?" she stammered. Sherry grinned. "You heard me, sweetheart." Emma worked quickly, pouring cup after cup as the bikers gathered around. The initial tension melted into a festive mood as they joked with one another and complimented Emma on her stand. One biker handed her a $20 bill for 2 cups, shaking his head in admiration. "Kid's got talent," he said. As Emma began to relax, one of the younger bikers crouched to her level. He asked gently, "What is the lemonade fund for, anyway?" Emma hesitated, then answered, "I am saving up for a school trip to the Chicago Aquarium." The group collectively awed, and Sherry shook her head with a laugh. "Well, we cannot just leave you hanging, can we?" Before Emma could process what was happening, the bikers began passing around a helmet, dropping cash into it. Coins clinked, and bills crinkled as the collection grew. When the helmet was handed back to Emma, her eyes widened in disbelief. There had to be over $100 inside. "That should cover more than just a trip," Sherry said with a wink. Emma's voice trembled with gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you so much." The leader, whose name she later learned was Hank, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Hard work deserves support, Emma. Keep dreaming big." As the bikers roared away, their engines fading into the distance, Emma stood in stunned silence. The helmet of cash sat on her stand, a symbol of unexpected kindness that had turned her day and her life around. The hum of motorcycle engines faded into the distance, leaving behind a stunned silence that enveloped Emma and her small driveway. She stared at the helmet of cash, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. The bikers, with their rough appearance and loud entrance, had turned out to be the most generous customers she could have imagined. Her mother, Janice, stepped out onto the porch, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. She had been watching the scene unfold from the front window. Her expression was a mixture of disbelief and pride. "Emma," she called softly, breaking the stillness. "Are you okay?" Emma turned toward her mother, her wide eyes shimmering with emotion. "Mom, they gave me all this," she said, holding up the helmet filled with bills and coins. "I think there's more than enough for the trip." Janice walked over, her steps cautious as if approaching a fragile dream. She peered into the helmet, her lips parting in astonishment. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "Emma, this is incredible." Emma felt a lump in her throat as she looked up at her mother. "Why would they do this? They don't even know me." Janice crouched down, placing a hand on Emma's shoulder. "Because sometimes people see something special in others," she said. "And when they do, they want to help. Maybe they saw how hard you were working, or maybe it reminded them of something they cared about. Either way, you should be proud of yourself. You earned this." Emma nodded slowly, the weight of the moment settling over her. Her heart swelled with gratitude, not just for the money, but for the kindness that had brought it to her. The next day, news of the bikers' visit spread quickly through Maple Creek. It started with Mrs. Thompson, who had witnessed the whole event from her porch. By noon, half the neighborhood seemed to know about the biker-approved lemonade stand. Curious neighbors began to stop by, their faces alight with intrigue and encouragement. Mr. Harris, the owner of the local grocery store, approached with a wide grin. "So, I hear you've got some special customers, young lady," he said, resting his hands on his hips. Emma blushed, still shy about all the attention. "Yes, sir," she replied. "They bought a lot of lemonade and they were really nice." Mr. Harris chuckled. "Well, sounds like you're running the most famous lemonade stand in town. Tell you what, next time you need supplies, come by the store. I'll sponsor the lemons and sugar. Consider it my contribution to your aquarium trip." Emma's eyes widened. "Really? Thank you so much, Mr. Harris." "Anything for a hard-working kid like you," he said with a wink before heading back to his truck. As the day went on, more people stopped by the stand. Some bought lemonade, while others simply came to chat and offer words of encouragement. Even the group of kids who usually played basketball down the street showed up. At first, Emma was nervous. They were older and often teased her at school. But today, their attitudes were different. "Hey, Emma," one of the boys said, his basketball tucked under his arm. "We heard about the bikers. That's pretty cool. Need help holding signs or something?" Emma hesitated, unsure if they were serious. But the boy grinned, waving his friends over. Soon they were stationed at the street corners, holding up makeshift signs they had created from cardboard boxes. "Best lemonade in Maple Creek," one sign read, in large uneven letters. The newfound support filled Emma with a sense of belonging she hadn't felt before. As the stand grew busier, she began to see her little corner of the street transform into a hub of activity. Neighbors who rarely spoke to one another were now laughing and chatting in line. Parents shared stories about their own kids' entrepreneurial ventures, and the basketball players traded jokes with customers as they directed them to the stand. Late in the afternoon, as the crowd began to thin, Emma spotted a familiar sight. The low rumble of engines echoed down the street once more. Her heart skipped a beat as the bikers returned, their motorcycles gliding into the neighborhood like a parade. This time, there were even more of them. Emma stepped out from behind her stand, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. She watched as the bikers parked in a neat row along the curb. Hank, the leader, removed his helmet and approached with a broad smile. "Couldn't stay away," he said. "We wanted to see how business was going." Emma grinned, her initial shyness fading. "It's been amazing. Everyone's been so nice. Thank you for what you did yesterday. It means so much to me." Hank's expression softened. "You're welcome, Emma. We could tell you've got heart, and we wanted to help." As the bikers dismounted, Sherry stepped forward, carrying a box wrapped in a checkered cloth. "Brought you something," she said, setting the box on the stand. "Fresh cookies to go with the lemonade." Emma's eyes lit up. "Thank you." They looked delicious. The bikers quickly became the center of attention, drawing curious onlookers and excited chatter. They helped manage the growing line, handing out cups of lemonade and entertaining kids who had gathered to admire their motorcycles. Sherry even pulled out a camera, snapping pictures of Emma with her stand and the buzzing crowd. As the day wound down, Hank found a quiet moment to talk to Emma. He leaned against the stand, his rugged face thoughtful. "You remind me of my daughter," he said, his voice low. "Maddie. She was about your age when we lost her. Used to love running little stands like this selling cookies, lemonade, you name it." Emma tilted her head, her heart aching at the sadness in his voice. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "She sounds amazing." Hank nodded, his eyes distant. "She was. And seeing you out here, working so hard, it's like seeing a piece of her again. Helping you. It feels like honoring her memory." Emma didn't know what to say. She glanced at her mother, who had been quietly watching from the porch. Janice walked over and placed a reassuring hand on Emma's shoulder. "We're so sorry for your loss," Janice said. "Thank you for sharing Maddie's story with us. It means a lot." Hank gave a bittersweet smile. "Thank you," he said. "Helping Emma is the best way I know to keep her spirit alive." The moment lingered, heavy with emotion, but also filled with a sense of connection. When the bikers finally rode off, their engines roaring in unison, Emma stood in silence, watching them disappear around the corner. She turned to her mother, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, I think this is about more than just the trip now. I want to do something bigger." Janice smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "Then let's figure out what that is, together." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the window of Emma's small bedroom. She sat cross-legged on her bed, the biker's helmet full of cash resting on her lap. Emma had spent the evening counting and recounting the money, still marveling at the sheer amount. Over $200 sat in the helmet, far more than the $50 she needed for the aquarium trip. She ran her fingers over the rim of the helmet, tracing its edges. It wasn't just a container for money anymore. It was a symbol of kindness, of people believing in her and her small stand. But now, it presented her with a question she hadn't considered before. What would she do with the extra money? The smell of pancakes wafted from the kitchen, and Emma set the helmet aside to join her mom at the breakfast table. Janice, still in her pajamas, greeted her with a smile as she flipped a pancake on the griddle. "Good morning, superstar," Janice said teasingly. "How does it feel to be the talk of Maple Creek?" Emma smiled shyly. "A little weird, but it feels good too." Janice slid a plate of pancakes in front of Emma and sat down across from her. "What's on your mind, sweetie? You've been quiet this morning." Emma hesitated, swirling her syrup with her fork. "Mom, there's so much money, more than I need for the trip. What if I used it to help other kids? Maybe for supplies or trips they can't afford?" Janice's eyes softened, and she reached out to squeeze Emma's hand. "That's a beautiful idea, Emma. I think it shows how big your heart is. But it's up to you. You earned this, and whatever you decide, I'll support you." That afternoon, Emma returned to her lemonade stand. The crowd from the day before had thinned, but a steady stream of neighbors still stopped by, chatting warmly as they bought cups of lemonade. Emma had added a small sign next to her original one. "Extra funds will support school supplies and trips for local kids." The sign sparked curiosity and admiration from customers. Mrs. Thompson was the first to notice it. "Well, aren't you just a little philanthropist?" she said with a twinkle in her eye. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Emma. You're going to make a lot of kids very happy." Emma smiled, feeling a swell of pride. She realized that what had started as her personal project was now growing into something much bigger. By early evening, the sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood. Emma was starting to pack up when she heard the familiar rumble of engines in the distance. Her heart skipped a beat as the bikers returned, their motorcycles rolling to a stop in their now familiar spot along the curb. Hank dismounted first, a wide grin on his face. "Still going strong, I see," he said. Emma laughed. "Thanks to you and your crew, I've been busier than ever." The other bikers began to gather around, chatting with neighbors and buying cups of lemonade. Sherry approached Emma with a paper bag in hand. "We brought you some more goodies," she said, setting the bag on the stand. Inside were handmade bracelets, each with a small charm shaped like a lemon. "We thought you could sell these alongside the lemonade, maybe raise even more for your fund." Emma's eyes widened as she held up one of the bracelets. "These are amazing. Thank you so much." "Don't mention it," Sherry said, ruffling Emma's hair. As the evening went on, Emma noticed Hank standing off to the side, leaning against his motorcycle. He seemed lost in thought, his rugged face touched with a hint of sadness. Summoning her courage, Emma grabbed a cup of lemonade and walked over to him. "Here," she said, offering the cup, "on the house." Hank looked down at her, surprised, before accepting the drink with a small smile. "Thanks, kid." For a moment, they stood in silence. Then Emma spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "I was thinking about what you said yesterday, about Maddie. I want you to know that what you did for me, it's inspired me to help other kids too. I think Maddie would be proud of you." Hank's expression softened, and he looked away, his eyes glistening. "You're a good kid, Emma," he said after a moment. "Don't ever lose that heart of yours." The bikers stayed until sunset, helping Emma finish her last few sales and entertaining the neighborhood kids with stories of their road trips. As they prepared to leave, Hank approached Emma one last time. He held out a small folded note. "Keep this," he said. "It's from all of us." Emma unfolded the note after the bikers had ridden off. In neat handwriting it read, "For the brightest light on a summer's day, keep shining, Hank and the crew." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she showed the note to her mother. "They didn't have to do all this," Emma whispered. "No," Janice said, wrapping her arm around her daughter's shoulders. "But they wanted to. That's what makes it so special." That night, as Emma lay in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about Hank's words and the kindness she had received. She realized that the biker's generosity wasn't just about the money, it was about believing in her, in the power of her little stand. As she drifted off to sleep, Emma made a promise to herself. She would use her lemonade stand, not just to achieve her own dreams, but to help others believe in theirs. The next morning, Emma awoke to a strange sound outside her window, the hum of voices. Pushing back the curtain, she peeked out and saw something that made her blink in disbelief. A small crowd had gathered in front of her house. Neighbors were chatting and pointing at her lemonade stand, which she had neatly folded and stacked at the edge of the driveway the night before. Among them were Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Harris from the grocery store, and even a few of the basketball kids. Emma hurriedly threw on a t-shirt and jeans and ran to the kitchen, where her mom was already watching from the front door. "Mom, what's going on?" Emma asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and nervousness. Janice smiled knowingly. "Looks like your story got around. I saw a post on the Maple Creek Facebook group this morning. Someone must have shared what happened with the bikers, and now the whole neighborhood wants to see what all the buzz is about." Emma's stomach fluttered with a mix of excitement and nerves. "But I wasn't planning to set up today. I don't even have lemonade ready." Janice put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Take a deep breath. We can make it happen. I'll help you get started." By mid-morning, Emma's lemonade stand was up and running again. This time, she wasn't alone. Janice had enlisted the help of a few neighbors to whip up extra batches of lemonade in their kitchens, and even the basketball kids had come back to hold signs and direct traffic. The crowd was larger than Emma could have imagined. Cars lined the street, their drivers rolling down windows to wave and call out words of encouragement. Parents with children, elderly couples, and workers on their lunch breaks all stopped by, eager to try what had now been dubbed biker-approved lemonade. Mr. Harris dropped by with a crate of lemons and a proud smile. "You're going to need these," he said, setting them on the table. "On the house, of course." Emma's cheeks flushed. "Thank you, Mr. Harris. I don't know what I'd do without everyone's help." "You don't have to do it alone," he replied. That's what a community is for. As the day wore on, Emma found herself juggling more responsibilities than ever before. She poured lemonade, counted change, and kept track of her growing funds in her notebook. At one point, she glanced at her mom, who was busy helping customers, and felt a swell of gratitude. But with the growing crowd came new challenges. Emma began to feel the pressure of keeping up with demand. A small line had formed, and a few customers started to look impatient. "Do you need help?" a voice asked behind her. Emma turned to see Mia, a girl from her class. They weren't particularly close. Emma was usually too shy to talk much at school, but Mia smiled warmly as she tied her long hair into a ponytail. "I can pour the lemonade if you want," Mia offered. "I heard about what happened yesterday. It's really cool what you're doing." Relieved, Emma nodded. "Thank you. That would be amazing." With Mia's help, the line began to move more smoothly, and the atmosphere lightened. Customers laughed and chatted as they sipped their lemonade, and Emma started to relax. Around mid-afternoon, the unmistakable rumble of motorcycles echoed down the street. Emma looked up, a grin spreading across her face as Hank and his crew rode in once again. This time, they were joined by even more bikers, their motorcycles gleaming under the sun. Hank parked his bike and walked over, carrying a box in his hands. "Thought you could use a little extra something," he said, setting the box on the table. Inside were T-shirts with the words, "Emma's Lemonade Crew," printed on them, along with a drawing of a lemon. Emma gasped. "These are amazing." "Thank you so much," Hank chuckled. "Figured it might help with the crowd control. Looks like you've got quite the operation going here." The bikers quickly jumped into action, helping to entertain the kids who had gathered around to admire their motorcycles. Sherry handed out bracelets, while another biker named Pete showed off a few harmless tricks with his bike, revving the engine and letting kids take turns sitting on it. The scene was festive, almost like a block party. Emma couldn't help but feel a swell of pride as she looked around at the laughter, the smiles, and the sense of community that had formed around her little stand. As the afternoon turned to evening, the crowd began to thin, and Emma finally had a moment to catch her breath. She sat on the porch steps with Mia, both of them sipping lemonade and watching as the last few customers trickled away. "You know," Mia said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I think what you're doing is really inspiring. I never thought something as small as a lemonade stand could bring so many people together." Emma smiled thoughtfully. "I didn't either, but it feels like it's not just about me anymore. It's about everyone." Mia nodded, then glanced at the helmet of cash sitting on the table. "What are you going to do with all of it?" Emma hesitated, her thoughts drifting back to the promise she had made to herself the night before. "I'm going to use it to help other kids," she said firmly. "For supplies, trips, whatever they need. I want everyone to feel the way I feel right now, like anything is possible." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the neighborhood in a warm orange glow, Emma felt a deep sense of peace. Her lemonade stand had started as a small personal goal, but it had grown into something so much bigger. Her mom joined her on the steps, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade from the last batch they had made. She handed one to Emma and smiled. "So," Janice said, "how does it feel to run the most famous lemonade stand in Maple Creek?" Emma laughed, taking a sip. "It feels amazing, but not because of the money. It's because of all the people who've helped me. I didn't know something this small could bring everyone together." Janice nodded, her eyes shining with pride. "That's the power of kindness, Emma. When you give, even in small ways, it inspires others to do the same. And when people come together, big things can happen." Emma looked at the helmet of cash beside her, now containing far more than she had ever imagined. She thought of Hank, the bikers, her neighbors, and the kids who had helped hold signs. She thought of her own dream of visiting the aquarium and how it had blossomed into something much greater. "I want to keep this going, Mom," Emma said softly. Not just for me, but for everyone. Janice placed an arm around her daughter's shoulders. Then let's make it happen, sweetheart. As the first stars appeared in the night sky, Emma smiled, her heart full of hope. The following morning, Emma woke with a renewed sense of purpose. Her lemonade stand had grown into something she could never have imagined, and now she had a bigger dream: to turn her success into a way to help others. She and her mom spent the early hours restocking supplies and preparing for another busy day. Lemons, sugar, and ice filled the small kitchen counters, and Emma carefully wrote "Lemonade Fund Update" on a poster board. "Are you sure you're ready for another big day?" Janice asked, glancing at Emma with a knowing smile. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "I'm ready. The more we make, the more kids we can help." By mid-morning, the stand was bustling again. Customers came not just for the lemonade, but for the warmth and sense of community that had blossomed around it. Some stopped to share stories of their own childhood ventures, others brought extra supplies or made donations to the fund. One customer, a kind man named Mr. Bennett, handed Emma a crisp $20 bill. "I want you to know something, young lady," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "What you're doing is inspiring, not just for the kids you'll help, but for the rest of us too. You're showing us what kindness can do." Emma's heart swelled. "Thank you so much, Mr. Bennett. That means a lot." The afternoon sun was high in the sky when the familiar sound of engines rumbled down the street. Emma set down her pitcher and grinned as Hank and his crew appeared once more, this time with an even larger group of bikers following them. The motorcycles lined the curb in a neat row, their polished chrome glinting in the sunlight. Hank dismounted first, carrying a small box in his hands. He approached Emma with his usual warm grin. "Still going strong, I see," he said, his deep voice full of approval. Emma nodded. "Thanks to all of you. The stand's been busier than ever." Hank set the box on the table and opened it, revealing rows of baked goods wrapped in clear cellophane. "Thought these might help you raise even more for the fund. Sherry baked them last night, cookies and brownies." Emma gasped, her face lighting up. "These are perfect. Thank you so much." Sherry, who was now surrounded by a group of curious kids, waved from across the yard. "Anything for our honorary crew member," she called out with a laugh. The bikers quickly became the center of attention. Kids gathered around their motorcycles, wide-eyed as they admired the shiny machines. One of the younger bikers, a man named Leo, entertained the crowd with harmless tricks, balancing his helmet on the tip of his boot and spinning it like a top. Sherry handed out bracelets and took photos with customers, while Hank helped Emma manage the growing line at the stand. The festive atmosphere felt more like a block party than a business venture, and Emma couldn't stop smiling. As the afternoon went on, Hank found a quiet moment to sit with Emma near the stand. He watched as she carefully poured lemonade, her hands steady and her focus sharp. "You've got a good thing going here, kid," he said. "You're not just selling lemonade, you're building something bigger." Emma looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think so?" "I know so," Hank replied. "It's not every day you see a community come together like this. And it all started with you." Emma hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind since the day she met him. "Why do you and your crew help so many people? I mean, it's amazing, but why?" Hank leaned back, his face softening. "You remember what I told you about Maddie?" Emma nodded, her heart aching at the memory of Hank's late daughter. "After we lost her," Hank continued, "there was this emptiness I couldn't shake. I spent a long time trying to fill it with anger, but that didn't help. Then one day, one of my buddies suggested we start giving back, helping kids like Maddie, who had big dreams but needed a little push to reach them. It gave me a purpose again." He looked at Emma, his eyes steady and kind. "You remind me of her, you know. That same spark, that same determination. Helping you feels like keeping a part of her alive." Emma's throat tightened. She set down her pitcher and met Hank's gaze. "I hope I can make her proud," she said softly. "You already have," Hank said with a smile. As the day wound down, the bikers began to prepare for their departure. But before they left, Hank gathered the crew and addressed the growing crowd. "I've got a feeling this little lemonade stand is going to do some big things," he said, his voice carrying over the hum of conversation. "And we want to help spread the word. So from now on, whenever we're out on the road, we'll be telling folks about Emma's stand and what it's doing for this town. Let's make sure her story reaches far and wide." The crowd erupted into cheers, and Emma's face turned red with a mixture of pride and gratitude. She watched as the bikers mounted their motorcycles, their engines roaring to life. Sherry waved as she rode past, calling out, "See you soon, superstar!" Emma waved back, her heart full as the bikers disappeared around the corner. That evening, Emma sat on the porch steps with her mom, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. The day had been overwhelming, but in the best possible way. "Mom," Emma said, her voice quiet but certain, "I want to keep going. Not just with the lemonade stand, but with the fund. I want to help as many kids as I can." Janice smiled, wrapping an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "I think that's a wonderful idea, and I'll be right here to help you every step of the way." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Emma felt a deep sense of purpose. What had started as a small dream for herself had grown into something so much more. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't just chasing her own dreams anymore. She was helping others believe in theirs. The next morning, Emma was greeted with a surprise. Sitting on the kitchen table was a pile of envelopes, each addressed to her. Some bore her name in careful handwriting, while others simply read, "Emma's Lemonade Stand." Janice, already sipping her coffee, smiled at her daughter. "Looks like word about your stand is spreading even further. These came from folks all over Maple Creek and beyond." Emma stared at the envelopes in awe. "What do you think they are?" "Only one way to find out," Janice said, nudging the pile toward her. Emma opened the first envelope, her fingers trembling with excitement. Inside was a letter from a family who lived on the other side of town. "Dear Emma," it read, "we heard about your lemonade stand and your idea to help other kids. Enclosed is a small donation to support your cause. Keep up the amazing work." Tucked inside was a $20 bill. Emma blinked, stunned. "They don't even know me." "They know what you stand for," Janice said gently. One by one, Emma opened the rest of the letters. Some contained small donations, $5, $10, while others carried notes of encouragement. By the time she was done, the pile of cash on the table had grown significantly. The overwhelming response from the community gave Emma an idea. That afternoon, she and Janice created a plan to expand the Lemonade Fund. They drafted a flyer inviting neighbors to set up their own lemonade stands, with proceeds going towards school supplies and trips for kids in need. "We'll call it Lemonade Day," Emma said, her voice bubbling with excitement. Janice grinned. "I love it. We'll distribute the flyers and see who's interested. I bet the whole town will get behind this." Over the next few days, Emma and her mom worked tirelessly to spread the word. They handed out flyers at the grocery store, the library, and even the diner where Janice worked. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. "I'll set up a stand in my driveway," Mrs. Thompson said, waving a flyer proudly. "My kids can help," said Mr. Bennett. "We'll make it a family project." Even the basketball kids chimed in. "We'll do one too," one of them said. "And this time, we'll actually make the lemonade ourselves." When Lemonade Day finally arrived, the transformation of Maple Creek was breathtaking. Nearly every block had at least one stand, each decorated with bright colors, cheerful signs, and smiling faces. Emma's stand, now adorned with balloons and a banner that read Lemonade Day Headquarters, served as the central hub, Customers came not only for lemonade, but also to drop off donations and share stories of their own involvement. Hank and the bikers returned once more, this time bringing stacks of flyers with a map of all the stands participating in Lemonade Day. "This is incredible," Hank said, taking in the bustling scene. "You've turned this into something huge, kid." Emma beamed. "I couldn't have done it without everyone's help." As the day unfolded, the impact of Lemonade Day became clear. Families worked together at their stands. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years shared laughs over cups of lemonade, and the town felt more connected than ever. Emma took breaks between serving customers to visit other stands, each one unique in its setup. One family had added homemade cookies to their menu, while another offered lemonade slushy. At every stop, Emma felt a sense of pride and gratitude. Her small idea had grown into a movement, one fueled by kindness and community. By sunset, Lemonade Day had raised far more than anyone had expected. Emma's notebook, where she tracked every donation, showed over $1,000 in total contributions. As the last customers trickled away, Emma sat with her mom on the porch steps, exhausted but elated. "You did it," Janice said, her voice full of pride. "This is more than I ever imagined." Emma nodded, clutching the notebook tightly. "It's not just me, though. It's everyone. I didn't think something so small could bring so many people together." Janice placed an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "That's the beauty of it, Emma. Sometimes the smallest ideas have the biggest impact." Later that evening, Emma gathered with a group of volunteers at the town hall to sort through the donations. They organized funds into categories, one for school supplies, another for field trips, and a third for community events. "I can't wait to see the difference this will make," Emma said, her heart full as she helped count the money. Hank, who had joined the effort, leaned over and said, "You've got something special here, Emma. This isn't just about lemonade anymore. It's about hope, and you're the one who started it." Emma blushed, but she couldn't help feeling a sense of pride. As she walked home that night, Emma thought about everything that had happened since the first day she set up her lemonade stand. What had started as a simple dream to fund her trip had grown into something she could never have imagined. She felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Lemonade Fund wasn't just a one-time event, it was the beginning of something bigger. "Mom," Emma said as they reached their house, "I want to keep this going, not just for me, but for everyone who needs it." Janice smiled, unlocking the door. "Then let's keep going, sweetheart. Together." As Emma stepped inside, she glanced at the framed note from Hank and the bikers on the mantel. The words felt truer than ever. "For the brightest light on a summer's day, keep shining." The days following Lemonade Day were a whirlwind for Emma. Her name was now synonymous with kindness and community in Maple Creek, and the Lemonade Fund had become a beacon of hope for local families. Donations continued to trickle in, and people stopped her on the street to share their stories or thank her for inspiring the town. But along with the praise came new challenges. Managing the fund required more time and organization than Emma had anticipated. She spent her evenings balancing ledgers, planning distributions, and drafting thank-you notes to donors. Despite her excitement, the sheer volume of responsibilities began to weigh on her. One evening, after a particularly long day of sorting donation envelopes, Emma sat at the kitchen table, with her head resting in her hands. The notebook that once filled her with pride now seemed overwhelming, its pages filled with numbers and to-do lists she struggled to keep up with. Janice noticed her daughter's slumped posture and sat beside her. "You've been quiet tonight," she said gently. "What's on your mind?" Emma looked up, her eyes clouded with doubt. "Mom, what if I can't handle all of this? What if I mess something up or let people down?" Janice reached out and placed a reassuring hand on Emma's. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed, sweetie. You've taken on a lot, and it's normal to feel this way. But you're not alone in this. There are people who want to help you. You just have to let them." Emma nodded slowly, though the knot of worry in her chest didn't entirely loosen. The next day, Emma's worries were compounded when she overheard a conversation at the grocery store. Two women stood near the checkout, speaking in hushed tones. "I don't know if a kid should be managing something so big," one of them said. "What if she makes a mistake? That's a lot of responsibility." Emma's stomach dropped. She quickly turned down another aisle, pretending to look at a shelf of cereal boxes. But their words echoed in her mind. As she walked home, the doubts she had tried to push aside crept back in. What if they were right? What if she wasn't ready for this? Later that evening, as Emma sat on the porch steps, Hank's motorcycle pulled up in front of her house. He dismounted and walked over, his usual confident stride softened by a look of concern. "Hey, kid," he said, sitting beside her. "You've got that look." "What look?" Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. "The one that says you're carrying the weight of the world," Hank said with a small grin. "What's going on?" Emma hesitated, then sighed. "I guess I just feel like maybe I'm in over my head. People are counting on me, and I'm scared I'll let them down." Hank nodded thoughtfully, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "You know, when I first started leading the crew, I felt the same way. I worried I wasn't cut out for it, that I'd make mistakes or disappoint people." Emma looked at him in surprise. "You did?" "Sure did," Hank said. "But you know what I learned? It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up, doing your best, and trusting the people around you to have your back." Emma considered his words, a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. "But what if people think I can't do it? What if they stop believing in me?" Hank turned to her, his expression serious but kind. "Emma, the people who matter believe in you because of who you are, not because you never make mistakes. And the ones who doubt you, they'll see your strength in time." The next morning, Emma decided to take Hank's advice. She reached out to a few trusted adults in the community, including Mr. Harris, Mrs. Thompson, and Sherry from the biker crew. She asked for their help in organizing the fund and managing the growing number of donations. To her relief, they all eagerly agreed. "You've done an incredible job, Emma," Mr. Harris said. "Now let us take some of the load off your shoulders." With their support, Emma felt a weight lift. Meetings were scheduled, tasks were divided, and the fund began to run more smoothly. One afternoon, as Emma was updating her notebook, Mia stopped by with a stack of homemade posters. "What's all this?" Emma asked, curious. Mia grinned. "I thought we could spread the word about the fund to the next town over. They might want to join in for the next Lemonade Day." Emma's eyes lit up. "That's an amazing idea. Thank you." As they worked together to hang the posters around Maple Creek, Emma felt a renewed sense of confidence. With each poster, they tacked to a pole or pinned to a bulletin board. She was reminded that she wasn't alone in this. By the end of the week, the fund was thriving again, thanks to the help of Emma's new team. And though the work was still challenging, Emma no longer felt like she was carrying it all by herself. One evening, as she and her mom sat on the porch enjoying the cool breeze, Emma spoke up. "Mom," she said, "I think I learned something important this week." Janice raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "That it's okay to ask for help," Emma said. "I thought I had to do everything on my own, but I don't. And now, it feels like we're all working together for something bigger." Janice smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "That's a lesson some people never learn, Emma. You're growing into someone truly remarkable." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in days, she felt not just capable, but ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, she made a quiet promise to herself to keep showing up, to keep believing in her dream, and to keep trusting the people who believed in her. Emma's confidence had begun to rebuild after asking for help, and the Lemonade Fund was thriving. With a small team of volunteers helping her manage donations and events, she had time to focus on new ideas. But there was still a lingering doubt, deep inside her, a quiet voice that asked, "Is this enough?" Am I really making a difference? That doubt was brought into sharp focus one sunny afternoon when Hank invited Emma to a biker charity event in a neighboring town. "It'll be good for you to see the bigger picture," he'd said with his usual knowing smile. Emma had agreed, curious about what he meant. The event was held at a large community park, bustling with activity. Tables and tents were set up under shady trees, and bikers from all over had gathered to raise money for children's charities. Hank led Emma and Janice through the crowd, introducing them to his friends and showing them how the event worked. "This is incredible," Emma said, her eyes wide as she watched bikers auction off custom gear, host games, and even grill burgers for attendees. Hank chuckled. "It's taken years to grow into what it is now, but it all started with one simple idea: helping kids. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?" Emma smiled but didn't reply. Later, Hank brought Emma to a quieter part of the park where a small group of people sat under a tent labeled "Meet the Families." Here, children and parents were sharing their stories with the bikers' stories about how the charity's support had changed their lives. Emma listened intently as a young boy named Caleb described how he'd been able to attend a summer science camp because of the donations. His mother wiped tears from her eyes as she thanked the bikers for giving her son an opportunity she couldn't have afforded on her own. "Because of this camp," Caleb said, his voice trembling with excitement, "I want to be a marine biologist someday. Thank you for helping me dream bigger." Emma's chest tightened. She saw herself in Caleb, someone with a dream, hoping for a chance to make it come true. As the afternoon wore on, Emma noticed a box of handwritten letters near one of the tables. Curious, she picked one up and began to read. "Dear bikers," it started. "Thank you for helping us get back on our feet. Your kindness gave us hope when we had none. We'll never forget it." The letter was signed by a family of 4. Emma read more letters, each one filled with gratitude and stories of how the bikers' generosity had made a difference. It was humbling and inspiring, and as she read, the quiet doubt in her heart began to dissolve. On the drive home that evening, Emma sat quietly in the back seat, clutching one of the letters Hank had given her as a keepsake. "Penny for your thoughts?" Janice asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Emma hesitated, then said, "I think I've been so focused on whether I'm doing enough that I didn't stop to see how much it means to the people I've already helped. Listening to Caleb and reading those letters, it made me realize that even small things can have a big impact." Janice smiled. "That's a wise observation, sweetheart, and it's true. Kindness creates ripples, even if you don't see them right away." Emma nodded, her grip on the letter tightening. "I want to do more, Mom. Not just here in Maple Creek, but everywhere I can. I want to make the Lemonade Fund something that lasts." The next morning, Emma sat at the kitchen table with her notebook open, sketching ideas for the fund's future. She wanted to expand its reach, helping kids in other towns and even partnering with schools to identify those in need. But as she brainstormed, she also remembered what Hank had said about not doing everything alone. She decided her first step would be to call a community meeting and invite people to share their ideas. The meeting was held in the town hall that weekend, and to Emma's surprise, it was packed. Volunteers, neighbors, and even a few bikers filled the room, their faces eager and curious. Emma stood at the front of the room, her hands trembling slightly as she addressed the crowd. "Thank you all for being here," she began. "When I started my lemonade stand, I just wanted to raise enough money for a school trip. But with your help, it turned into something so much bigger, something I never expected." She paused, glancing at Hank in the front row. He gave her a small nod, encouraging her to continue. "I've been thinking about how we can make the Lemonade Fund grow, so we can help even more kids. But I can't do it alone. That's why I wanted to hear your ideas." The room buzzed with excitement as people began raising their hands. One by one, they shared suggestions. Hosting more community events, creating partnerships with local businesses, and even starting a website to accept online donations. Emma scribbled notes as fast as she could, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and gratitude. After the meeting, Hank pulled Emma aside. "You did good, kid," he said. "This is how you build something that lasts, by bringing people together." Emma smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you. You've taught me so much." Hank waved her thanks away with a grin. "Nah, you've got the heart for it. That's what matters most." That night, as Emma sat on the porch with her mom, she felt a new sense of clarity. The doubts that had once held her back were gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. "Mom," she said, looking up at the stars, "I think I finally understand what Hank meant about showing up and doing your best. It's not about being perfect. It's about believing in what you're doing and letting people help you along the way." Janice wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "And look at how far that belief has taken you. I'm so proud of you, Emma." Emma leaned into her mother's embrace, her heart full of gratitude and hope. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but she was ready to face them with her community by her side. The morning after the town hall meeting, Emma woke up earlier than usual, her mind buzzing with excitement and ideas. She sat at her desk, flipping through the notes she had taken during the meeting. The suggestions from her neighbors were creative and practical, each one a reminder of how much support the Lemonade Fund had gained. She paused at one idea in particular: starting a lemonade day in the next town over. Expanding the movement felt like the right step forward. With a deep breath, Emma decided to talk it over with Janice. Downstairs, Janice was already making breakfast when Emma joined her. The smell of pancakes and syrup filled the small kitchen, and the sunlight streaming through the window gave the room a cozy glow. "Good morning, superstar," Janice said, smiling as Emma took a seat. "You've been working hard lately. What's on your mind today?" Emma hesitated, unsure of how to phrase her thoughts. "I've been thinking about what everyone said at the meeting," she began, "especially about expanding Lemonade Day. Do you think it's too much for me to take on?" Janice set a plate of pancakes in front of Emma and sat down across from her. "Sweetie, I think you've already done more than most people your age would even dream of. If you believe this is the right step, then I believe in you. But remember, you don't have to do it all alone. You have a whole town behind you." Emma nodded, her mom's encouragement easing her nerves. "Thanks, Mom. I think I'll start by reaching out to some schools in the next town over. Maybe I can partner with them to set up stands for their kids." Emma spent the next few days crafting emails, making phone calls, and visiting schools in the neighboring town of Pinewood. At first, she was nervous, unsure if anyone would take her seriously. But to her surprise, the responses were overwhelmingly positive. Principals and teachers praised her initiative, and parents expressed excitement about getting their kids involved. By the end of the week, Emma had secured commitments from 3 schools to participate in a Pinewood Lemonade Day. The following weekend, Emma and her team, now including a mix of volunteers, neighbors, and bikers, met at the Maple Creek Library to finalize plans for the event. Hank, who had become a regular at these meetings, leaned back in his chair with a grin. "I've got to hand it to you, Emma. You're turning this little lemonade stand into something incredible." Emma smiled, but her mind was focused on the task at hand. "I just want to make sure everything goes smoothly. We've got a lot more stands this time, and I don't want anyone to feel left out." "That's why you've got us," Sherry chimed in, her braided hair bouncing as she spoke. "We'll take care of the logistics. You just focus on being the heart of this operation." Emma felt a wave of gratitude as she looked around the table. These weren't just her supporters. They were her friends, her community, her family in every way that mattered. On the morning of Pinewood Lemonade Day, Emma stood at the edge of a bustling park where the event's kickoff celebration was being held. Rows of brightly colored lemonade stands stretched as far as she could see, each one run by excited kids and their families. Emma felt a swell of pride as she watched the community come alive. Parents mingled, kids laughed and played, and the scent of fresh lemonade filled the air. "Pretty amazing, isn't it?" Hank said, stepping up beside her. Emma nodded, her voice tinged with emotion. "It's more than I ever imagined." "You made this happen," Hank said. "Never forget that." As the day unfolded, Emma walked from stand to stand, talking with the kids and families who had joined the event. She met a little girl named Lily, who proudly showed off her sign, which read, "Lemonade for new school shoes." "My mom says this will help us buy supplies for the fall," Lily explained, her smile as bright as the summer sun. Emma crouched down to Lily's level. "That's amazing, Lily. You're making a difference, just like all these other stands." For the first time, Emma saw the full extent of what she had built. It wasn't just about raising money, it was about empowering others to dream bigger and believe in themselves. By the end of the day, Pinewood Lemonade Day had raised thousands of dollars for local kids. As Emma stood on the makeshift stage to thank everyone for their participation, the crowd erupted into applause. "This started with a small stand in my driveway," Emma said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But it grew into something much bigger because of all of you. Thank you for believing in this dream and making it your own. Together we've proven that even the smallest ideas can change lives." The applause grew louder, and Emma spotted Hank in the front row, clapping proudly. That evening, back in Maple Creek, Emma sat on the porch with her mom. The stars were beginning to dot the sky, and the air was cool and calm after the day's excitement. "You did it," Janice said softly. "You've created something that will last far beyond this summer." Emma looked down at the notebook in her lap, its pages filled with plans for the future. "I couldn't have done it without everyone's help," she said. "But it feels good to know that something so small can make such a big difference." Janice smiled. "That's the beauty of it, Emma. Kindness has a way of growing." Emma leaned back, her heart full of gratitude and hope. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for certain. The lemonade legacy was just getting started. The weeks following Pinewood Lemonade Day were a whirlwind for Emma. Word about the event had spread quickly, reaching neighboring towns and even local news outlets. Stories of children raising money for school supplies, trips, and other needs had captured hearts across the region. Emma's name had become synonymous with hope, and the Lemonade Fund was growing faster than she ever thought possible. Despite the newfound attention, Emma remained grounded. Her days were still filled with the familiar rhythms of summer, helping her mom around the house, checking her notebook for updates, and spending evenings on the porch reflecting on how far her journey had come. One morning, as Emma sat at the kitchen table reviewing letters from new donors, Janice walked in holding a stack of mail. "Another batch for you, superstar," she said, setting the envelopes on the table with a smile. Emma opened one letter, her eyes widening as she read. It was from a teacher in a nearby town who had started a lemonade stand with her students to support their school library. "Dear Emma," the letter began, "your story inspired us to take action in our own way. Thanks to you, we've raised enough to buy new books for every classroom. You're proof that one small idea can grow into something incredible." Emma folded the letter carefully and set it aside, her chest tight with emotion. She had started her lemonade stand to fulfill a personal dream, but now she realized it was about something much larger than herself. Later that day, Hank and Sherry stopped by for an impromptu visit. They pulled up on their motorcycles, the familiar roar of their engines bringing a smile to Emma's face. "Hey, kid," Hank said as he dismounted. "Got a minute?" Emma nodded eagerly, leading them to the porch where Janice had set out glasses of lemonade. "We wanted to talk about what's next," Sherry said, her braided hair glinting in the sunlight. "The way this thing is growing, we think it might be time to take it to the next level." Emma tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Hank leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, A lot of people want to be part of what you're doing, Emma. What if you created a foundation? Something that could organize events like Lemonade Day in more towns, maybe even across the state. Emma blinked, stunned. The idea felt enormous, almost too big to wrap her head around. "Do you really think I could do that?" she asked quietly. Hank grinned. "Kid, you've already done it on a small scale. This is just the next step. And you won't be doing it alone. You've got all of us." Sherry nodded. "We'll help you every step of the way." Emma looked at her mom, who had been listening quietly. Janice's eyes were filled with pride. "What do you think, Mom?" Emma asked. "I think you're capable of anything you set your mind to," Janice said. "And if this is what you want, we'll find a way to make it happen." Over the next few weeks, Emma and her growing team worked to lay the groundwork for the Lemonade Legacy Foundation. With help from Hank, Sherry, and a group of dedicated volunteers, they created a website, designed promotional materials, and reached out to local businesses for support. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in, and towns across the region expressed interest in hosting their own Lemonade Days. Emma felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever before, knowing that the foundation would allow her to reach even more kids in need. One evening, as Emma sat on the porch reviewing plans for the foundation's launch, a familiar sound reached her ears. She looked up to see Doug, the burly biker with the eagle tattoo, who had shared the story about his late daughter, Maddie, walking up the driveway. "Doug!" Emma exclaimed, standing to greet him. Doug smiled, though there was a hint of emotion in his eyes. He held out a small box. "I wanted to give you something," he said. Emma took the box carefully and opened it. Inside was a photo of Doug and Maddie, sitting at a lemonade stand much like Emma's. Maddie's smile was wide and full of joy. "I thought you should have this," Doug said quietly. "You've done more for me than you'll ever know. Seeing you out here, working so hard, it's like a piece of her is still here." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she looked at the photo. "Thank you, Doug. I'll keep this forever." Doug placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've got a good heart, Emma. Don't ever lose it." The day of the Lemonade Legacy Foundation's official launch was a celebration like no other. The park where the event was held was packed with families, volunteers, and supporters from all over the region. Lemonade stands dotted the landscape, each one run by kids eager to contribute to the cause. Hank stood at the front of the crowd, his leather jacket gleaming in the sunlight, as he introduced Emma to thunderous applause. Emma stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding. She took a deep breath and spoke into the microphone. "When I started my lemonade stand, I just wanted to raise enough money for a school trip," she began. "But thanks to all of you, it became so much more. This foundation isn't just about lemonade or raising money. It's about kindness, hope, and believing in each other. Together, we can make a difference that lasts for generations." The crowd erupted into cheers, and Emma felt a wave of emotion wash over her. That night, as Emma sat on the porch with her mom, she reflected on everything that had led to this moment. The lemonade stand that started it all, the unexpected kindness of strangers, and the challenges that had taught her resilience. "Do you think Maddie would be proud?" Emma asked softly, holding the photo Doug had given her. Janice smiled, wrapping an arm around her daughter. "I think she'd be over the moon, just like I am." As the stars sparkled overhead, Emma felt a deep sense of gratitude. The Lemonade Legacy was just beginning, and she couldn't wait to see where it would go next. As Emma's story shows, even the smallest idea can grow into something extraordinary when fueled by kindness, perseverance, and the support of a community. Her journey reminds us that generosity and connection have the power to ripple out and change lives, one step at a time. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more inspiring tales of resilience, hope, and the power of small acts making a big difference, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that uplift and inspire. Thank you for being part of this journey. Together we can create a world filled with kindness, one story at a time.